The draw made for the round of 16 of the Copa del Rey today. Culture Leonesa, of course, very much the surprise package. Got a nice tie at home against the defending champions Valencia. Meanwhile, it's Zaragoza against Real Madrid. Barca take on Leganés, and Mirandes play host to Sevilla. Now, they made some changes this year, didn't they, Sid, to give the competition a bit of a shot in the arm. No longer two legs, just one leg. And the team that's in the lower league would play host to a team who's in the upper echelons of Spanish football, and it seems to have worked.
Yeah, it really has, and it desperately needed it, you're right. There was a real sense the Copa del Rey was drifting, that people weren't interested enough. It was inevitability about the teams that reached the final and inevitability about results in the early rounds, and this has really worked. I was at Unionistas against Real Madrid on Wednesday night. They scored a goal to make it 1-1. They had a very good chance when they were 2-1 down to make it 2-2. Eventually lost 3-1. The same night, Barcelona needed a 94th minute goal to beat Ibiza. The same night, Athletic Bilbao needed penalties to get through, and there was a sense afterwards that, wow, this is good. These teams really made a fight of this. They really made a match of this. But, of course, none of them actually overthrew the teams from the first division. Then the second night, on the Thursday night, you then get 5 games. In 4 of them, first division teams were knocked out by teams from division below or even 2 divisions below. And it really has worked. And as you know, everyone in Spain loves to debate anything and everything, and they'll argue about anything at all. And yet on both Wednesday night and Thursday night, it was brilliant listening to the radio here in Spain because everyone was on the same side. Everyone was saying, yeah, this cup is brilliant.
Shaka, we've talked a lot, haven't we, about how you could reform the FA Cup, make it more interesting. Could this work if you said the lower league side had to play host, had home automatically?
Yeah, well, without question, potentially, yes. And because everybody, especially in the FA Cup, are looking forward to giant killings. And I think that brings interest to the Cup regardless of who you support. The only challenge to that is, for many of the clubs in the lower leagues, they look forward to deep FA Cup runs because of the added revenue that comes their way if they play at a big ground. But generally, more times than not nowadays, you don't get 60,000 coming to an Old Trafford for an FA Cup tie. So I think there's a lot of upside to this.
But they still get the TV revenue, potentially, from a Premier League club coming to a lower league club, whatever division they're in. This idea actually has been mooted in England.
Do you like it?
I do like it. And the FA, as great as the and you know, we've all played in the FA Cup final, Shaq, myself and Stevie, when we've talked about this, how it's a great historic competition, but it has to modernise. We've got Club World Cups coming up, going to 24 teams, we've got Euros and World Cups, you get the African Cup of Nations is moving again to the January period. The FA are going to have a rethink. It's not going to go away. And this would somewhat negate the fact that people say, well, there's no replays, so you know, the Kidderminster Harriers and the Bognor Regis and all these small teams are not. You're probably going to get a big team coming to your place.
Yeah.
The law of averages. So I like what they've done in Spain, and I think the FA are going to have a real think about it very soon.
Here's the other thing that I would say. While we enjoy the upsets, and it's nice for the storylines, when the upsets start happening so early in the competition, there is a chance, an outside chance, that once you get to the final stages of whether that's Copa del Rey or FA Cup, you're going to find yourself with Tranmere and Accrington Stanley and so on and so forth.
And Portsmouth.
Or Cultural Leonesa. And while that's great right now, when it comes to the final of the competition, who of us wants to watch Cultural Leonesa play in the final? I don't.
Craig does.
The other side of the coin is it may force the hand of some managers to play a slightly stronger team. The reason being is because if Liverpool pull a 4th-tier team at home, you know, you could probably make 11 changes and still win the game, probably. If you go away to one of these teams, you're still the favourite, but I can tell you, going to these grounds is horrible.
Right.
And to get through the old blood and gut sort of performance, you're probably going to have to play some more experienced players. So I think it's something to factor in, and I think it could work. If the FA don't do anything about it, then the FA Cup is just going to get even more diminished as the years go on because big clubs are not playing the best players.
But the big clubs have to be able to put an emphasis on it. Because if they don't make it important, it's always going to be important to the lower division teams. But if the teams in the first division do not make it a priority, do not make it important, and even within the first division, the real big teams within the first division don't make it a priority, then eventually you lose that sort of spirit of, okay, great, the lower division team advanced. Okay, that's the magic of the FA Cup. In this case, the magic of Copa del Rey. if the big teams are not interested in it, I think eventually interest goes away anyways.
Final word on this from you, Sid?
Yeah, just the interesting thing in this is that you say, should the FA Cup be looking at what Spain's doing and taking some kind of inspiration from it? Of course, this has happened because the Spanish have looked at their competition struggling over the last decade, have looked at England, have looked at the FA Cup and thought, that's what we want to do. Now, they haven't gone all the way in that it's not a pure draw, it's not straight balls out of a bag all the way through, and it is kind of directed up to a point. But they did take on the FA Cup model in the sense of saying, we can't have these double-headed games anymore. It's got to be one game, it's got to be all or nothing. And that, by the way, does encourage, of course, big teams to play strong teams because they know, get it wrong once and you're out. And you see that in Salamanca on Wednesday night. Real Madrid played almost their strongest possible team against a side that's basically on a budget a 2,000th the size of theirs.
Thanks so much for watching ESPN on YouTube. And for more sports highlights and analysis, be sure to download the ESPN app. And for premium content and live streaming, subscribe to ESPN Plus.